Today I'm going to learn how to do this animation with geometry nodes. So let's see. Let's do the camera, the light, go to geometry nodes. Let's create a new profile. And first of all, we are going to create the 3D map. So let's use a grid. Let's connect it, make it bigger, and add more vertices. Something like that. Now what I want is to displace this grid in the z-axis. So let's use set position. And let's use in offset a noise texture. Now we could use vector math in subtract to make this thing come back, but what I'm going to do is to disable normalize. So I get back this. Now, really important, I only want to displace this in the z-axis, not in the 3-axis. So I'm going to use combine and select only z-axis. So I have this displacement. I'm going to add more vertices. And now what I'm going to do is to start again with the noise so we can see better. I'm going to set 0 and start step by step. For example, something like that. Here you can control the detail if you want, to make it smooth, however you want. I recommend you to play with these values. Now what I want is to offset. I'm going to make it bigger and add more vertices. Is to offset this, for example, in one direction. For example, in this one. So how we do that? If we able 4D, we can move the noise like this, but I don't want that. What I want is to move it with the position. So let's use position, because this is to control where the noise is. So we can control, for example, like these mountains moving from one side to another. And now to displace this, we need to add here a vector math. And now with this, we can move the position of the noise. So for example, if I push this, you can see that now I'm displacing this noise in this axis, in X, and we can do it in Y and in Z. But in Z, I don't like it because I want to see the effect like moving. So for example, let's use X, this one. Now to animate this all the time, what we can do is to isolate again these 3 axes, and in the X, just add seconds, as in time node with seconds. So now if we press spacebar, we have this animation. Perfect. If you want more resolution, you can add more vertices, and if you want bigger, then increase, however you want. But if you increase, then you need to add more resolution. I'm going to do it like that. And now I want to convert this to curve to mesh. So first of all, let's add mesh to curve. And now curve to mesh. And let's select cycle curve. Let's decrease this, for example, 0.01. Something like that. Let me check. And let's go directly to render view to see how it looks like. First of all, let's make the background dark. So let's go here and decrease this. And let's add a material here so we can see this emitting light. So set material, select one material, and let's go to this material. And for example, go to emission and make it light. And let's enable in render blue. So we have this animation. Okay, however, I don't want so many points, so many vertices, and also check that this is going really slow. So you have to know that more vertices you have and more glow, slower it goes. So I'm going to decrease this, for example, something like that. Maybe this value. Now what I want is to create an animation scaling this map. But I don't want to use, for example, a transform. Why I don't want to do this? Look, because when it's really small, we can see the distance is like compressed. And this is ugly. I don't want to do this because it looks weird. So what I'm going to do is to animate these values with keyframes. And instead of creating 4 keyframes, I'm going to add one value here and one value here. So let's use value to control both values because it's the same number. And the same with this, but with an integer, because this is an integer. So let's bring an integer and connect it here. So now what I want, let's go to the beginning, insert a keyframe, and this in 0, and insert another keyframe. And now let's go some frames like this and increase this. So this was more or less, I think, 12 meters, and this 60. For example, add whatever you want. And let's insert a keyframe and insert a keyframe. So now we have this animation. As you can see, it looks much better. Look, it has all the time the same distance when it's scaling. Okay, so we have this. Now if we want to change the color of this, for example, to have a gradient, so the higher parts have a different color and the lower parts another color, what we can do, I'm going to hide this panel, is to go here, open the shade editor, let's press N to hide this, and we need to play with this color, remember. So what I'm going to do is to add a color ramp, and now we have a color ramp, but we cannot see what is, because we need to add a gradient. So let's add a gradient, and connect it here, and now you can see that the black is here, and here the white. So what I want, let's select two different colors. For example, I'm going to select this one, blue, and here the opposite. So for example, this one. Now what I want, you can leave it like that if you want, but what I want is one color in the top and the other in the bottom. So what we can do is to use the node wrangle in add-ons and press Ctrl T to add this, and now we need to connect it in object. So now we have this gradient that is really compressed here, and to move this, if I remember, I think was this one. If we rotate this, we can rotate it, and if we leave it in 90 degrees, you can see now that we have like the higher parts in one color and the lower in another. So if you want to make more contrast, what you can do is to push the colors. Or if you want, you can select constant. And now with one layer, so you can see we can add more colors to this part. But I want a bit of transition, so I'm going to leave it, for example, something like that. Perfect. So we have already this effect. And now let's create the animation of the projection. So how we do that? Let me add some notes here. What we're going to do is to create another path. So let's add join geometry, and let's make a copy of this. So we have another path, and now we can check here the original mesh. However, I want this mesh displaced, so this is wrong. I should make a copy of this, offset position. So now we have the same mesh. Now what I want is to convert this mesh, I'm going to describe this, in points. We can hide this panel for now. So you have two options. You can add instance on points. I'm going to do this first, so you have more ideas. And now add curved lines. So we have all these lines in every point of this mesh. And now what I want is to have another point that I can move to control these lines. So you can add an empty, or you can use a point if you want here. I'm going to use an empty, for example, this one, and press G, Z, and leave it here. let's come back to here. I'm going to lock this, and let's bring this empty here. So object info, and let's leave it here, and select the empty. So what I want is that the end of every line is connected to the center of this empty. So at the end, looks like a projection. So to do this, what we have to do is to add set position. So let's add set position. Now we can move all the lines, but we don't want to do this. We want to move only the end. So we need to do a selection, end selection, and select one value in the end. So with this, we are selecting only the end of every curved line. And if we click here, we can see that this is not working because we need to convert this in a geometry, because now it's instance. So this is not working. So let's realize this, realize instance, and now you can see that this is working. Perfect. But what we want, remember, is to connect it to the empty. So here, so let's connect location to position. By the way, leave this in 0. And now with an empty, we can control the position of these lines. I'm going to give a mesh to this line so we can see it again. I'm going to reuse these nodes, Ctrl C, Ctrl V. And let's connect this here and here. So now you can see better. This is like a projection. If you don't want to see so many lines, now we have two options. First of all, let's reconnect the map so we can see this map. Now I want to add a material here more transparent. So to do this, we need to add another material. And what I want is to change this material, because if not, we cannot see anything. So let's go to material in cubes. And let's create another material. So now what we have to do is to come back to shade editor, and let's open again the shade editor. And what I want is to make like a bit transparent this material. So I want to apply a gradient to these lines. So first of all, let's go to options and select blend mode alpha blend. So thanks to this, now you can press N to hide this. If we click here, we can make this material transparent. By the way, very important here, select projection. If not, it's not working. So now as you can see, if I decrease this, it disappears. If I increase, it's full opaque. Okay, but what I want is a gradient here. So let's use, again, a gradient and connect it here. And let's use Hologram so we can decide which colors we want to control. Now, as you can see, we have the black here and here the whites. So, question, how we say I want the gradient from the start to the end of every line, not just like this. So, to do this, what we have to do is to use attribute and use the factor of the curve. So, we need to get the factor before we convert it to instance. That's why here, I'm going to clean this a bit. So here, we need to get the factor. So let's add a store name attribute and select in value a spline parameter. Why I'm doing this? Because the spline parameter, the factor, is the information of the start and the end of every line. So we can send this information to here, so he can apply the gradient to every line. So let's write a word, for example, factor, and now it's taking the factor of the lines before being converted to an instance. And now we can send this information here and say, hey, check this info. And now as you can see, we have the gradient applied to every line. So look, if you want to see better, if I push the black, remember the black is in the bottom. you can see I'm pushing the black because every line have a gradient. So now basically when it's black, it's transparent. Why? Remember, because we are working with alpha. So basically with this, what I'm doing is a bit like a gradient here, instead of just doing like that. That's why. And now we can change the color here. For example, I'm going to select, I don't know, for example, by the way, the color is not here, sorry. That's wrong. This should be white because the color is here. My mistake. So let's add. Let's come back to render, first of all, to see better. And now let's connect everything again here. However, we have a problem, right? We have a lot of lines. What we could do is to decrease the number of points, so we have less lines, as you can see. However, there is a better way. What I'm going to do, I don't want a line in every vertex, and I want to move this animated. So one solution is that instead of adding a line in every point, we are going to leave this like that. We are going to convert this mesh. Let's check this first of all. So here we have this mesh. I'm going to convert this mesh to random points. How? With distribute points on faces. So now, if we check this, you can see that we have different points. So now, in every point, we will have a line. So it's not so perfect. It's more random. Look. And if you want less lines, then decrease this number. And now, if we connect everything, we have this. And looks much better than having too many lines. If you want more lines, then more lines. If you want less, less. And if you want to animate these lines more, what you can do is to animate the seed. Look. Every time I click here, it changes. So, what you can do is to add another scene time. But now select frame, because we want every frame to move. And look the effect. So, with all this, if we come back here, we have this really cool animation. By the way, I'm going to give some glow here. So, let's increase a bit. Something like that. And look how cool is this. We have this animation, and the best part is that you can control where it starts the projection with this. So you can leave it also, if you want, in the bottom. And we have this animation. But I don't know why I prefer in the top. I have been adding some more glow to make it more pop up. And this is more orange. And remember, you can control the radius of these lines here. So you can make it bigger or smaller if you think they are too big. Now, I'm going to give you more tips. If you want to make like this, simulate that it's more light and not these lines, what we can do is to add here, before we convert it to a mesh, add set curve radius. So we can control the radius of these lines. But what I'm going to do is to use the factor. Why? Because I want in this point thinner and in this point bigger. So let's use here again spline parameter factor. And now what we have to do is to add float curve. By the way, if you got lost what I'm doing, I have tutorials about this node, how it works. So if you want to refresh it, I recommend you to see it. And now here, before I do something, I'm going to increase this radius because now we don't have any control. So remember always to increase something. Let's multiply it. And now here I can multiply this, right? So as you can see, here is wider than here. And what they want is the opposite, because if not, here looks weird. So we need to invert this. If we click here and we invert this, now everything have the same size. But if we decrease this point, now, as you can check here, it's thinner. And here is bigger. So looks like more light rays. Now, I know it's too bright. So, to control this, remember here, you can control like the general size. I'm going to leave something like that. To make this not so glow, let's come back to projection material. And the tip is to, if we increase this, we are dilating. And this means full opaque. So the trick is to set here a color that is not full white. And check the comparison. For example, if we decrease this, we are making more transparent. So, as you can check, it's more real, more light. So you can leave it however you want. Don't select black because if not, disappear. But we can leave it, for example, like that. So from black to this color, and now looks more real, as you can check. And remember, if you want more lines, then just go back here and add more lines. And also what you can do, if you want more tips, is to select Poison Disk. And here, if you increment this, it's like saying, let me show you how this works. So basically with this, you are saying, I don't want points really close. So you are distributing these points more equal. So now you have these lines. And if we go here, we have this result. So here, if you want less lines, just increase this. By the way, what I did also is to, at the end, so at the beginning we have this animation, just copy the keyframes, but in the other direction. I know the tutorial was a bit long. Tell me if you like this type of videos or you prefer shorter. And if you like, give a like, subscribe, and remember, you can download this project and many more, and also watch exclusive tutorials on my Patreon. So, see you next video.